They thought they could replace me with a script. It took exactly one command line to show them they'd bet against the wrong person. The funny thing about automation is that someone still needs to hold the keys. When you fire the locksmith before changing the locks, well, that's when the real education begins. They called me expendable, a redundancy in their gleaming new automated infrastructure. They forgot that even the most sophisticated systems need someone who understands them. And I understood everything. Lauren Mitchell never took sick days. In 5 years at Venture Axis, she'd become the ghost in the machine, the one who answered 3 a.m. alerts, who patched production while others slept, who made the impossible deployments look routine. At 35, she'd built her reputation on being utterly reliable, the human fail-safe in a world obsessed with automation. The Denver office hummed with the particular energy of a SaaS company convinced it was changing the world. Glass walls, standing desks, kombucha on tap, all the trappings of innovation. But at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, the only sound was Lauren's mechanical keyboard as she navigated through terminal windows, fixing what the overnight deployment had broken. "Rollback initiated," she muttered, watching green text cascade down her screen. The deployment team had pushed untested code again, trusting that someone would catch it. That someone was always Lauren. She'd built the rollback system herself, an elegant piece of engineering that could revert changes without losing customer data. Nobody asked how it worked. They just knew it did, because Lauren was there to operate it. By 6:30 a.m., production was stable. Lauren pushed back from her desk, stretching muscles cramped from hunching over her laptop. Around her, the office remained empty. In 3 hours, it would fill with product managers and salespeople who'd never know how close they'd come to a catastrophic outage. She grabbed coffee from the kitchen, real coffee, not the artisanal nonsense they served during business hours, and returned to her desk. The post-incident report would take another hour, documentation that maybe 3 people would skim, if she was lucky. Lauren had become Venture Axis's insurance policy, the DevOps architect who never complained, never pushed back, never said no. When AWS hiccuped, she smoothed it over. When developers bypassed testing, she caught their errors. When executives promised impossible timelines, she somehow delivered. Her Slack showed 47 unread messages, all variations of, "Is production okay?" from people who'd woken up to check their phones. She typed a single response in the general channel. Resolved, RCA to follow. The truth was, Lauren didn't mind the work. She loved the puzzles, the challenge of keeping complex systems running. What bothered her was the invisibility. Success in DevOps meant nothing broke, which meant nobody noticed you at all. She'd become human infrastructure, as taken for granted as electricity or running water. Her calendar popped up a reminder. Q4 platform upgrade, final sprint. The big one. 3 months of preparation culminating in a complete overhaul of their core systems. Lauren had designed every aspect, from the migration strategy to the fallback procedures. It would be her masterpiece, the kind of seamless transition that would let Venture Axis scale to 10 times its current size. She pulled up the architecture diagrams, reviewing them one more time. Everything ran through systems she'd configured: Jenkins for deployment, Vault for secrets management, a carefully orchestrated dance of containers and services. She'd even paid for some of the critical tools from her own credit card when procurement dragged their feet, with Eric's casual promise to sort it out later. Eric Dalton, the new CTO who spoke in buzzwords and thought leadership quotes. He'd been hired 6 months ago to transform their technology stack, though Lauren had yet to see him write a line of code or debug a single issue. As sunrise painted the Denver skyline orange through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lauren allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Tomorrow's upgrade would be flawless. She'd make sure of it, just as she always did. The office began to fill, developers trickling in, unaware of the morning's crisis. Product managers chatting about sprint planning, the usual rhythm of a company that ran on the rails Lauren had laid. She didn't know that in 48 hours, after her greatest success, they'd decide she was expendable. That automation had made her obsolete. That Eric Dalton was already preparing slides about operational efficiency and reducing human-dependent processes. Lauren Mitchell, the ghost in the machine, was about to learn what happened when you became too good at being invisible. The platform upgrade went live at 2 a.m. Thursday. By 2:47 a.m., Lauren knew they'd pulled off something remarkable. Zero downtime, zero data loss. Every service migrated seamlessly, every dependency resolved. The kind of deployment that engineers dream about but rarely achieve. She stayed online until 6 a.m., monitoring metrics, watching for anomalies that never came. The new system purred like a precision engine. Years of technical debt erased in one elegant migration. Lauren finally closed her laptop, exhausted but satisfied. This was why she did the job. Thursday afternoon, an unusual calendar invite appeared. Strategic Operations Review, Eric Dalton's office, 3 p.m. Friday. No agenda, no attendee list, just Lauren and the CTO. Eric's corner office was a shrine to disruption. Copies of the Lean Startup and 0 to 1, arranged just so. A standing desk he never used. Motivational posters about innovation that made Lauren's teeth hurt. She'd fixed 3 production outages from this very room while Eric pontificated about paradigm shifts to investors. "Lauren, come in, come in." Eric's smile was conference keynote bright. Fantastic work on the migration. Really fantastic. She sat across from him, noting the presentation already queued on his monitor. Stock photos of gears and abstract network diagrams. The kind of deck that said everything and nothing. "I wanted to talk to you about our operational future," Eric began, clicking through slides. "Venture Axis is entering a new phase. We need to be lean, agile, automated." Each buzzword landed like a small stone dropping into still water. Slide 12 showed a diagram labeled Human Light Infrastructure. Lauren recognized her own architecture, simplified to the point of meaninglessness, with cartoon robots replacing the complex system she maintained. "The beautiful thing about what you've built," Eric continued, "is that it runs itself now. Self-healing, self-scaling, self-managing." He said self like it was a magic incantation. Lauren kept her expression neutral. "Systems don't run themselves, Eric. They need monitoring, updating, security patches." Of course, but that's just maintenance, right? "We can outsource that, maybe some offshore contractors, a few automated scripts." He waved his hand like dispersing smoke. "The heavy lifting is done." There it was, the trap she'd built for herself by being too good at her job. Make the complex look simple, and people assume it is simple. Friday morning came too quickly. Lauren arrived to find HR already in the small conference room. Tissues and water bottles arranged like props for a play everyone knew the ending to. Eric sat with his hands folded, wearing his serious leader expression. "This is never easy," the HR manager began, reading from a script Lauren could probably recite herself. "Due to organizational restructuring and our move toward automated operations," the words washed over her. "Severance package, Cobra benefits, return company property, sign here, initial there, 15 minutes to end 5 years. Your position has been eliminated," Eric added, as if she might have missed the point. "It's nothing personal. Lauren, you've automated yourself out of a job. It's actually a testament to your success." Lauren looked at him, really looked at him. This man who couldn't debug a bash script if his life depended on it. Who thought Kubernetes was just fancy Docker. Who once asked her to make the cloud more cloudy for a board presentation. "The system runs itself now," she repeated, her voice flat. "Exactly." Eric brightened, missing her tone entirely. "You've built something so robust, so automated, that we don't need a full-time architect anymore. Maybe some consulting hours if issues arise, but really, what could go wrong? What could go wrong?" Lauren signed the papers without argument, shook hands like a professional, and walked out of Venture Axis with a banker's box of personal items. No one met her eyes. The overnight hero of the platform migration had become overhead to be optimized away. In the parking lot, she sat in her car and laughed. Actually laughed. They thought they'd won. Thought they'd gotten $1 million infrastructure for free. They just didn't know the bill hadn't come due yet. Lauren's home office was her sanctuary: 3 monitors, a mechanical keyboard that cost more than most people's laptops, and a view of the Rockies that reminded her there was a world beyond terminal windows. She set the banker's box on her desk and opened her laptop, not out of habit, but curiosity. Force of habit made her check the infrastructure dashboard first, everything green. The beautiful system she'd built humming along, oblivious to her absence. Then she noticed something that made her pause. Her credentials still worked, all of them. She methodically went through the list. AWS root access, active. Jenkins admin, active. Vault unsealing keys, still in her possession. The GitHub organization owner status, unchanged. Even the monitoring systems reported to her personal email. A setup Eric had specifically requested to keep things simple during the early days. Lauren pulled up the billing dashboard. There it was, in black and white. The Datadog account, the PagerDuty subscription, several critical AWS services, all still billing to her personal credit card. She'd submitted expense reports for months, but Eric's promise to transition everything to company accounts had been forgotten in the buzz of transformation. She opened the Jenkins configuration. Her personal GitHub token was woven through hundreds of deployment pipelines. The Vault initialization used her PGSIP key. The entire CI/CD infrastructure authenticated through credentials tied to Lauren Mitchell Ajmail. Not her now deactivated corporate account. A competent CTO would have audited these dependencies, would have insisted on proper handoffs, knowledge transfer, documentation. But Eric Dalton wasn't competent. He was a PowerPoint warrior who thought infrastructure was something you bought, not something you cultivated. Lauren drafted an email to HR, professionally outlining the situation, listed every system, every credential, every personal resource still entangled with Venture Access's infrastructure. She offered to transition everything properly for a consulting fee. Of course, fair market rates for specialized knowledge. She waited an hour, then 2, then checked her corporate email one last time before it deactivated. There it was, an auto reply from Eric. Out of office for Leadership Summit. For urgent matters, please contact Offshore DevOps Team. Offshore DevOps Team. The contractors who'd never touched the core systems, who Eric had hired at a fraction of Lauren's salary, the same ones who'd caused the Tuesday morning outage she'd fixed. Lauren closed the laptop and made herself tea. Earl Grey, properly steeped, in the good china. She stood at her window, watching clouds build over the mountains, and considered her options. She could be professional. Send another email, maybe call HR directly. Make sure they understood the precarious position they'd put themselves in. Be the responsible adult, as always. Or she could wait. Let them discover what self-running really meant when the person holding the keys decided to stop turning them. Her phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification Eric Dalton had posted. Proud to announce Venture Access's successful transition to fully automated operations. Proof that with the right vision, human dependencies can be eliminated. Innovation. Automation. Leadership. Lauren screenshotted it. Then she pulled up her infrastructure diagram, the real one. Not Eric's cartoon version. Every system, every dependency, every critical path that ran through credentials she controlled. It looked like a spider web. And she sat at the center. They'd fired her on Friday afternoon, probably thinking they were being merciful, giving her the weekend to process. They didn't realize they'd also given her time to think, to plan, to decide exactly how educational her exit would be. She opened her personal GitHub and began documenting everything. Not the fixes, those would come later. At contractor rates that would make Eric's PowerPoints weep. But the dependencies, the vulnerabilities, the single points of failure they'd created by trusting someone and then discarding them. Monday would come soon enough. And with it, the first deployment attempt that would show Venture Access exactly what they'd thrown away. Lauren sipped her tea and smiled. They wanted automation? She'd give them exactly what they asked for. Nothing. Saturday morning arrived with mountain sunshine and zero urgency. Lauren made breakfast. Actual breakfast, not the protein bars she'd survived on during deployment weeks. She opened her laptop with the same calm precision she'd once reserved for production emergencies. The process was surgical. No malice, no destruction, just the clean separation of her personal resources from Venture Access's infrastructure. She started with the billing accounts. Datadog, PagerDuty, 3 AWS sub-accounts, all transitioned to her personal projects. The corporate cards on file had been declined for months anyway. Eric's finance team would notice when the services stopped working, not before. Next, the access tokens. Her GitHub personal access token, woven through every Jenkins job, every automated deployment, revoked. The OAuth apps she'd created for integrations, deauthorized. One by one, like closing doors in an endless hallway. The Vault unsealing keys required more thought. Vault was the keeper of all secrets, database passwords, API keys, service certificates. Without the unsealing keys, Vault would remain locked after any restart. Lauren had 3 of the 5 keys. Eric had insisted on this setup. Paranoid about insider threats while blind to the obvious irony, she wrote a simple script to rotate her keys out of the ceremony. Not to lock them out, that would be sabotage. Just to ensure her keys no longer worked. A clean break. The Jenkins admin credentials were almost anticlimactic. Password changed, SSH keys rotated, service account tokens expired. All the routine maintenance she'd normally do, except now there was no one to hand the new credentials to. Lauren worked methodically, documenting each change in a personal notebook. Not for them, for herself. Evidence of responsible action, of protecting her own resources while causing no intentional harm. If systems failed, it would be because Venture Access had built critical infrastructure on borrowed time and personal goodwill. By noon, it was done, every personal resource reclaimed, every borrowed credential severed. She hadn't deleted anything, hadn't corrupted data or planted logic bombs. She'd simply taken back what was hers, like picking up your coat on the way out of a party. She checked the Venture Access status page one last time, all green. The systems would continue running on cached credentials, on grace periods, on the momentum she'd given them. For a while, the PagerDuty webhook would be the first to fail, probably during Monday's deployment window. Jenkins would start throwing authentication errors shortly after. Vault would keep its secrets locked the next time someone thoughtlessly restarted it. The monitoring dashboards would go dark as Datadog hit its API limits. A cascade of failures, each one revealing how much of Venture Access's automated infrastructure was actually Lauren Mitchell's personal craft project, subsidized by her credit cards and sustained by her expertise. She closed the laptop and spent the rest of Saturday in her garden. Tomatoes needed staking. The basil was ready to harvest. Simple, honest work where growth was visible and effort was rewarded. Sunday passed in deliberate disconnection. Phone on silent. Laptop closed. She read an actual book. Cooked elaborate meals. Took a long hike in the foothills. The mountains didn't care about deployment windows or system architecture. They'd been here before the first line of code and would remain after the last server powered down. That evening, she poured a glass of wine and sat on her deck, watching the sun set behind the peaks. Somewhere in Denver, Venture Access's infrastructure was running its last healthy hours. The Sunday night deployment would go smoothly, her scripts handling edge cases, her monitoring catching errors before they cascaded. By Monday morning, they'd start to understand. Eric would arrive to find his self-running systems had forgotten how to run. The offshore team would discover that documentation without access was just creative writing. The developers would learn what dependency management really meant. Lauren raised her glass to the darkening sky, to systems that run themselves, to automation without architects, to executives who confuse correlation with causation. Tomorrow, the education would begin. Monday, 7:47 a.m. Lauren was enjoying her second cup of coffee when her personal phone exploded with notifications. Former colleagues, LinkedIn connections, even people she'd barely spoken to at Venture Axis. She silenced it and opened her laptop to watch the chaos unfold from a distance. The Venture Axis Slack workspace, she still had guest access through a shared channel, painted a picture of escalating panic. Jenkins is showing auth failures on all builds. Dev team lead, 7:32 a.m. Datadog dashboards are down. Can't see any metrics. SRE, on call. 7:41 a.m. PagerDuty didn't alert for the failed deployment. Customer reported the outage. Support manager. 7:45 a.m. Eric's first message appeared at 8:15 a.m. Small hiccup with our monitoring. Offshore team is on it. Business as usual. Everyone. By 8:30 a.m., the tone had shifted. The offshore contractors, faced with systems they'd never touched, were posting increasingly desperate messages. They couldn't access Jenkins. Vault was sealed and wouldn't respond to their keys. The very automation Eric had bragged about had become an impenetrable fortress. Lauren pulled up her email. 17 messages, all variations of urgent and critical. She archived them unread and went back to her coffee. At 9 a.m., the real panic set in. A major client had reported payment processing failures. The billing system, dependent on Vault for Payment gateway credentials, couldn't authenticate. Every transaction was failing silently, queuing up in a backlog that grew by the minute. Eric's messages became less composed. All hands on deck. We need to restore service now. The development team tried to help, but they discovered what Lauren already knew. Without Jenkins, they couldn't deploy fixes. Without Vault, they couldn't access production databases. Without monitoring, they were flying blind. Every system depended on every other system, and Lauren had been the invisible thread holding them together. By 10 a.m., the CEO had joined the Slack crisis. Lauren watched developers she'd trained frantically Google basic DevOps concepts. The offshore team leader admitted they'd never actually worked with Vault before. Someone suggested just restarting everything, which made the situation dramatically worse when Vault refused to unseal. An emergency all-hands was called for 10:30 a.m. Lauren knew the agenda without attending, finger-pointing disguised as root cause analysis. She pulled up LinkedIn and saw Eric's Friday post about eliminating human dependencies had attracted dozens of increasingly sarcastic comments as news of the outage spread. At 11:47 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown. Denver number. She let it go to voicemail, then another. And another. The fifth time, she recognized the CEO's personal cell. The voicemail was barely contained, panic wrapped in corporate speak. Lauren, we need to discuss some transition issues. Please call immediately. She texted back, I'm available for consulting. Please have HR send my standard contractor agreement. The response was instant. This is urgent. We need you now. I understand. My emergency rate is $500 per hour, 8-hour minimum, paid in advance. I can start once payment clears. Silence. Then, from the CEO. Isn't this your system? Lauren typed carefully. It was. You'll find my termination paperwork specified all company property was returned. I've retained no Venture Axis assets or access. Meanwhile, the Slack meltdown continued. Customer support reported that enterprise clients were threatening to pull contracts. The sales team couldn't access their CRM, another Vault dependency. Marketing couldn't update the status page. Jenkins managed that deployment too. At 12:30 p.m., the CTO finally appeared in Slack. Working with leadership on a solution, everyone stay calm. Someone leaked a screenshot of Eric in the leadership meeting, visibly sweating while the CEO gestured at a wall of red monitoring dashboards. The image spread through tech Twitter with captions like, POV, you fired your bus factor, and automation can't automate itself out of this one. By 2 p.m., 3 more voicemails had arrived. Legal wanting to clarify her separation agreement, HR discussing opportunities to return. Eric himself, stammering about miscommunications, and reconsidering restructuring decisions. Lauren muted her phone and made lunch. The systems she'd built were revealing their true nature, not automated tools, but complex instruments that required skilled hands. Every minute of downtime was a masterclass in the difference between knowing about infrastructure and knowing infrastructure. She had no doubt they'd eventually pay her rate. The only question was how many millions in lost revenue it would take before Eric's philosophy of human-light operations became too expensive to maintain. By 3 p.m. Monday, Venture Access's board had convened an emergency meeting. Lauren knew because at 3:17 p.m., she received a call from Richard Holbrook, the lead board member and primary investor. Unlike the panicked voicemails from management, his tone was professionally ice-cold. "Ms. Mitchell, I believe we need to discuss terms." Lauren had been expecting this call. "Of course, I've sent my consulting agreement to HR. Standard terms for emergency infrastructure recovery. I've seen it. $500 per hour is substantial." "It's actually below market for emergency recovery work," Lauren replied evenly. "Especially for systems I built from scratch. Would you like references from other companies who've paid similar rates?" Silence. Then, "The agreement includes a clause about sharing this story publicly. Anonymized, of course. No company names, no identifying details. Just a cautionary tale about the importance of proper knowledge transfer and infrastructure ownership. I think it could help other organizations avoid similar situations." Richard's laugh was humorless. "You have us over a barrel." "No," Lauren corrected. "You put yourselves over a barrel. I'm offering to help you get down from it. The rate reflects the urgency you've created, not any malice on my part." "Fine. But I want Eric in the room while you work. He needs to understand what went wrong." Lauren smiled. "That's included in my rate. Consider it executive education." The payment hit her account at 4:47 p.m. 8 hours at $500 paid in advance. By 5 p.m., she was logged into a secure session, sharing her screen with a room full of executives who'd learned the hard way that infrastructure doesn't run itself. "Let's start with Jenkins," she began, pulling up the authentication logs. "When you revoke personal access tokens without migrating to service accounts, this is what happens." Eric sat silent in the corner of the video call, his usual buzzword arsenal depleted. Lauren walked through each system methodically, explaining not just how to fix the immediate issues, but why they'd occurred. "Vault unsealing requires a quorum of key holders," she explained, initiating the recovery process. "You had 5 keys. I held 3, as Eric requested. When I rotated my keys out, which is standard security practice when someone leaves, you were left without quorum. Why didn't you tell us?" Eric finally spoke, his voice cracking. Lauren pulled up her email history. "I did. Friday at 4:47 p.m., sent to HR and yourself. Subject line, critical infrastructure handoff required." It apparently went unread. She shared the email on screen. Detailed, professional, outlining every system at risk. Time-stamped 3 hours after her termination. Eric's face went from red to white. The next 4 hours were a masterclass in DevOps archaeology. Lauren rebuilt authentication chains, migrated billing accounts, established proper service accounts. But she didn't just fix things, she documented every step. Created runbooks, established actual handoff procedures. "This is your new Jenkins service account," she explained, generating credentials. "It's tied to your corporate GitHub organization, not any individual. Document this. Test it regularly. Assign multiple administrators." She restored Vault access but implemented proper key management. Set up billing alerts so they'd know before services shut down. Created monitoring dashboards that the offshore team could actually understand. Throughout it all, she maintained perfect professionalism. No gloating, no told-you-sos. Just competent, expensive expertise solving problems that never should have existed. At 9:47 p.m., with core systems restored and tomorrow's deployments ready to run, she prepared to sign off. "One more thing," Richard interrupted. We'd like to discuss a longer-term arrangement, perhaps returning to your previous position. I'm happy as a consultant. Lauren cut him off politely. My rates for ongoing work are on the last page of the agreement. Volume discounts available for contracts over 40 hours per month. She watched Eric's jaw clench. Her monthly consulting minimum would exceed her previous salary. And everyone in the room knew it. We'll review and get back to you, Richard managed. Of course, you have my number. For emergencies after hours, please note the surge pricing outlined in Section 3. As she ended the call, Lauren caught a final glimpse of the executive room. Defeated faces, bruised egos, and laptops full of documentation they'd have to actually read. Eric Dalton, the transformation visionary, looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. Education was expensive, but ignorance, as Venture Axis had learned, cost infinitely more. Tuesday morning brought a different kind of notification. Not panic, not pleading, but the quiet ping of a LinkedIn update. Lauren opened it while enjoying her leisurely breakfast, a luxury she'd forgotten existed during her Venture Axis years. Eric Dalton has updated his position, former CTO at Venture Axis. The announcement was sparse, professional. Pursuing new opportunities and grateful for the experience. The comments section, however, told a richer story. Former colleagues posting knowing emoji. Competitors sharing similar automation transformation horror stories. One brave soul had simply written, "Should have kept your architect." By Wednesday, the tech press had picked up the story. Denver SaaS startup learns hard lesson about human light infrastructure, ran in TechCrunch. The article was carefully sourced, quoting anonymous employees about the Monday meltdown. Lauren's name never appeared, but anyone who knew the industry could connect the dots. Richard Holbrook called Thursday afternoon. The board has accepted Eric's resignation, he said without preamble. We're also implementing all your recommendations. Proper documentation, redundant access, actual knowledge transfer protocols. That's wise, Lauren replied. We'd like to retain you on a consulting basis. 20 hours per month, reviewing infrastructure decisions, ensuring we don't. He paused, searching for words. Repeat recent mistakes. Lauren pulled up her consulting agreement. I can do that. Terms are in Section 5. Already approved, Lauren. I need you to know, this wasn't how I wanted things to go. Eric convinced us that automation meant we didn't need senior architects. We should have known better. Systems are built by people, Lauren said simply. They're maintained by people. And when you forget that, they're destroyed by that forgetting. After ending the call, she updated her LinkedIn profile. Independent infrastructure consultant, specializing in fixing systems broken by ego. Helping companies understand that automation amplifies expertise. It doesn't replace it. The inquiries started immediately. CTOs who'd watched Venture Axis's very public lesson wanted audits. Startups needed architecture reviews. Enterprise clients sought second opinions on their transformation initiatives. Lauren was selective. She took clients who understood that infrastructure was investment, not overhead. Who valued the architects as much as the architecture? Who knew that the most dangerous phrase in technology wasn't move fast and break things, but it runs itself? 3 weeks later, she published her blog post, The Myth of Self-Running Systems, a DevOps Cautionary Tale. No names, no identifying details, just the story of a company that fired its locksmith and then wondered why the doors wouldn't open. It went viral in tech circles. Comments poured in from engineers who'd lived similar stories, who'd built critical systems only to be deemed unnecessary once things were stable, who'd watched their creations crumble in the hands of those who confused operation with understanding. But the best comment came from an anonymous account. I was in that room during the recovery, watching someone rebuild our entire infrastructure from memory while explaining each step was humbling. We thought we were buying automation. We were actually renting expertise. The bill always comes due. Lauren smiled, closed her laptop, and went for a hike. The mountains were particularly beautiful in the autumn light, unchanging, enduring, requiring no authentication tokens or deployment pipelines, just presence and respect for what they were. Her phone buzzed with another consulting inquiry. A startup in Austin, struggling with mysterious infrastructure issues after restructuring their DevOps team. The same story, different city, different egos making identical mistakes. She'd take the call tomorrow. Today was for hiking, for breathing mountain air, for remembering that the most elegant systems in the world were the ones that never forgot the humans at their heart. Back in Denver, Venture Axis ran smoothly. Properly documented, professionally maintained, expensively supported by contractors who charged almost what Lauren would have. They'd learned their lesson at a cost no spreadsheet had predicted. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's education. It's letting people discover exactly what they threw away. It's building something so well that its absence becomes impossible to ignore. Lauren Mitchell had built many systems in her career, but her masterpiece wasn't code or infrastructure. It was the perfect demonstration that, in technology, as in life, you can't automate away the human element. You can only pretend you have until the moment you can't. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of tech karma and workplace justice, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your own thoughts or similar experiences in the comments. Your stories and perspectives make this community richer.